Welcome to part 3 of my beginner's guide to Elden Ring. This guide is meant to help new players progress through Elden Ring in a somewhat logical order. I'm still new to this, so if there's anything you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. If these videos have been helpful, please leave a like and follow for more. Enough shameless plugs, let's go ahead and get started with what we're really here for. Part 3 takes us back to Limgrave, starting at the gatefront ruin side of Grace. Head to the west up the hill. Enemies are guarding this location, so be mindful. There's also a giant that will jump down, so be careful of him too. You can also just sprint past him on Torrent if you want. As you go higher up the hill, you will see a golden seed on your right hand side, under an Erd Tree sapling. Be sure not to miss this, more flasks are always useful. At the top of the hill, you will find the Stormhill Shack side of Grace. On the side of the shack is another Stone Sword key, and finally in the shack is a young maiden, Roderica. Talk to her and she will give you a jellyfish summon. This is a bulky summon that has a ranged attack which poisons enemies, very helpful to stall out bulkier bosses. It also has a minor quest very late in the game, so be on the lookout for that too. After receiving the jellyfish, exhaust the rest of her dialogue and continue forward. Sticking slightly to the left, heading up a hill, you will find another giant. Stick close to his feet and it should be easy to take him out. After defeating the giant, there will be a chalice on the edge of the cliff containing the Strength Not Crystal Tear. If you use strength scaling weapons, be sure to add it to your Flask of Physic next time you rest at a side of Grace. Speaking of, go ahead and jump down the cliff and head south. You will find the War Master's Shack side of Grace, and inside you will find Bernal, an NPC who will sell you a variety of different Ashes of War. Feel free to buy a couple, but we'll find some more useful ones later on. After you finish with Bernal, head north towards the bridge. There will be several groups of wolves that jump down from the sky. Be sure to deal with them as they appear, or you may get quickly overwhelmed. If you're on Torrent, as you're headed north, you'll be forcibly dismounted. That's because you're being invaded by your cousin, Henricus. Unlike the previous invasion, you won't have any help. Don't worry, you got this. Once defeated, you will receive the Hammer Talisman, but that's not the main reason we're here. We're now going to head to the east. You'll see a scarab on a ledge, and past that scarab, you'll see a mounted soldier, Godric. This opponent uses the Golden Vow Ash of War, which adds holy damage and decreases physical damage received. This is also a good opportunity to practice mounted combat, which will be useful later on. Once defeated, you will receive the Golden Vow Ash of War. I would put this on one of your weapons or shields. Paired with the Bloody Slash Ash of War you received in Part 1, you will be dealing quite a bit of damage now. Parkouring your way down the side of this ledge, you will find the Death Touch Catacombs. This dungeon has an Uchigatana katana. If you started with a samurai, this is the starting weapon, so having two will let you power stance them. It should be noted that you can only power stance or dual wield two of the same type of weapons, with very few exceptions. To find it, turn around under the second set of stairs and head into the passage to the left. After exiting, there will be another exit on your left-hand side, and you'll find the Uchigatana on a corpse. The boss of this dungeon is a Black Knife Assassin, but it has half health, but even at half health, this enemy is very fast and can deal a lot of damage. Try to solo it a few times before using your summons. There are going to be a few humanoid bosses in the future that you won't be able to use your summons for, so this is a good opportunity to work in combat against these kinds of foes. After defeating the assassin, there is another chest at the end of the arena. Open it to get a death root, and that'll be very useful shortly. After exiting the catacombs, jump across the valley and you should hear someone calling out for help. Jump to the other side to find a living jar Alexander. This one is friendly and he's stuck in a hole. Use a few charge attacks to knock him free, and then talk to him a few more times to exhaust his dialogue. Meeting him here isn't necessary to progress his questline, but we can't just leave him here like this. After talking to him, continue across the bridge, fight the Pumpkinhead, or run past him, the choice is yours. On the other side of the bridge, you'll find a merchant. He doesn't sell anything particularly useful, and a little farther down the trail you'll find a man on the left-hand side. This is D. Just D. Talk to him and he'll warn you not to go into the village ahead. It's infested with the undead. Go ahead and ignore him, that's exactly where we're going. The boss here is a Tibia Mariner. It summons a lot of minions, but once you defeat the Mariner, the minions will all vanish. He is a little annoying as it teleports across the battlefield, but overall it is pretty weak. Once defeated, you will get another Death Root and the Skeletal Militiaman Spirit Ashes. This summons two Spirit Skeleton Warriors to fight with you. This is one of my used summons on my first playthrough. They aren't overly strong, but like the skeletons you fight, they have to be hit a second time after being defeated to stay down. So most bosses don't do that, and you effectively have summons for the entire boss battle. I like them, but obviously use what you enjoy most. After receiving your rewards, you will see D standing next to what looks like a giant death root. Talk to him and he will reveal a waygate behind the Third Church America and tell you to talk to someone named Garonk. So let's go ahead and warp to the church and use the waygate behind it. You'll now be warped to the far edge of Caelid. You're very underleveled for this area, so for now just turn around and travel to the giant door, activate the Site of Grace inside, and talk to the giant beast at the end. This is Garonk. Give him the 2 death roots that you have, and he will give you the Clawmark Seal, which enhances bestial incantations, the Beast Eye, which alerts you when there is a death root nearby, and the Bestial Sling incantation. This is a great early game incantation that is a rapid fire close range spell that causes a decent amount of stagger. After you finish talking to Garonk, there isn't anything else you can do here. Check out my beginner guide to get OP for some extra things you can do in Caelid if you don't mind sprinting past enemies for relatively easy to grab loot. Once you're done in Caelid, we'll head back to the Saints Bridge Site of Grace back in Lungrave and head to the Murkwater Catacombs. Off the right side of the bridge, you will see a spirit spring. Jump onto it and continue south to find a second spirit spring and jump down to it as well. From the second spirit spring, follow the path to the northwest. You will soon find the catacombs on your left-hand side. Overall, this dungeon is very short. Be careful of the traps on the floor. If you step on them, they will shoot 3 volleys of arrows towards you. You can also use this to lure enemies out, step on the switch, and have the arrows kill the enemies for you. Again, no unique loot in this dungeon, so make your way to the boss, which is the Grave Warden Duelist. This shouldn't be an overly challenging fight. Once defeated, you will get the Banished Knight Angbel summon. A strong summon, but I prefer Lutel or the summons personally, but again, it is your choice. Now let's go ahead and warp back to the Saints Bridge Site of Grace again, and this time jump down on the Spirit Spring and head to the north, to find the High Road Cave on the left-hand side. There is some platforming for this dungeon, but overall the route is fairly straightforward. Again, no useful loot, so just have fun exploring. The boss of the dungeon is a Guardian Golem. It is stronger than the golems you found outside, but the strategy for fighting them is the same. Stay close to his feet and avoid being stepped on. The reward for this is the Blue Dancer Talisman, which increases damage as you have a lighter equipment load, which can be useful for mages or ranger type builds. Now that we've cleared nearly every dungeon in Limgrave, it's time to start taking on some stronger enemies. Move to the Aegil Lake north side of Grace and pass time until nightfall. We're going to take on the Knights Cavalry on the bridge, and they only appear at nighttime. So if you've been traveling mostly during the day, you probably haven't seen any yet. This is a mounted fight, and it is easier to stay on your horse. Unfortunately, you cannot use summons for this fight, so just work on your mounted combat. It'll be useful later on. After dealing enough damage, he'll get knocked down off his horse. You can jump down and get a critical attack on him while he's still on the ground. The reward for beating him is the repeating thrust Ash of War. I personally never use this one, but feel free to try it out. Everybody has a different playstyle. The next enemy also only comes out at night and also does not allow for summons. Warp to the War Master's Shack and head to the ruins to the west at night to encounter a Deathbird. This can be a tricky enemy to defeat. I find it easiest to try to keep rotating behind it. Mounted combat didn't really work well for me on this one. The reward is a Blue Feathered Branch Sword Talisman, which raises your defense when HP is low. I personally don't find this one very useful, since most enemies 2 or 3 shot you anyways. We are almost done with the boss gauntlet. We're going to warp to the first step and get revenge on the Tree Sentinel. The mounted combat with the Knights Cavalry was your warm-up to this fight. The Tree Sentinel has higher HP and higher damage output than the Knights Cavalry. It also cannot be forcibly dismounted. The upside is that you're able to use summons for this fight, and I recommend you take advantage of that. The reward is the Golden Halberd. I use this weapon a bit in my first playthrough. You probably don't have the stats for it right now, but if you're going for a heavier weapon build, this is worth hanging on to. Finally, to wrap up this part 3 of my beginner's guide, we're going to take on the Flying Dragon Aegil. You can summon Yura for this fight, but it requires a few steps. First, you have to talk to him under the bridge past the Murkwater Cave. He will warn you to stay away from the lake due to the dragon. Next, you must fight the dragon and die. Once you respawn, you need to talk to him under the ruins to the south of the Dragonburn ruins. He'll call you a dumbass for not listening to him. Now you can find his summon sigil next to the Stake of Marika in the lake. Now that I've said all that, I will also mention that I don't think summoning him is a good idea. Having another player, even an NPC, will increase the health of bosses. It also prevents you from mounting Torrent. Seeing as Aegil flies around the lake, having to chase him down on foot gets really annoying. Instead, I recommend switching to the jellyfish you got from Margarika earlier. After a few hits, it will be poisoned and deal damage over time. Use the debris around the lake to hide from the fire whenever possible, and jump off of Torrent to deal quicker damage when you're able to get close to him. I would only mount up when you are actively chasing Aegil or running from the fire. Once defeated, you will obtain a Dragon Heart. This heart can be offered at the Church of Dragon Communion for some incantations. We found that earlier in part 1, I believe it was. The Dragon Fire and Dragon Claw incantations are both very reliable early game. I wouldn't get the Dragon Maw incantation, as a lot of enemies are too quick for it to be used effectively. If you don't have any points in Arcane, you probably can't use any of these spells anyways. But it's just something to think about later on. This will conclude part 3 of my beginner's guide to Elden Ring. Stay tuned for part 4, where we will go complete the Weeping Peninsula. Leave a like and comment for more. Good luck, and GG everyone.